was there in the summer of '91 at FCA Lacrosse camp that we began to dream about what it'd be like to pull together a team.
To have an impact in the lacrosse community.
At the time, the Vail tournament was the tournament.
The Wimbledon of lacrosse.
We had this idea of like, hey man, we could maybe put a team out to Vail. We might have enough guys.
The challenge was finding enough Christian lacrosse players that understood that concept and were good enough to play the game of lacrosse at that level.
We commissioned Dan, kind of being the full-time FCA staff guy, to look into it, and he called the tournament directors out in Vail.
I begged them just to take my name and number. Begged them, just, hey, put me on a waiting list. If someone drops, no one ever drops out. We never have teams that drop out. No one's ever dropped out in the history of the Vail Shootout.
Mid-May, 1992, roughly then, I get a call from Dan.
We got into the Vail Shootout. We got into the Vail Shootout, but we don't have a team. What are we gonna do?
I went to Frank and said, I think we should just book 20 flights.
20 flights in faith at $300 a pop on a credit card when you don't have that money in the bank to pay it.
We started praying, calling people and saying, hey, you wanna play for the FCA Lacrosse team? Hey, Frank, do you know this person? I'll call this person.
He goes, they got this Vail thing and plane tickets and Gale this, and we might need you. I don't know, but we might.
First question is, do you play lacrosse? Like, can you catch and throw? What's your lacrosse resume? Do you love God? Okay, yes, no, maybe.
They ended up with 21 players, and 4 of them were high school players. They had just graduated from high school.
We were like, good to go, let's move forward. We got our team together. So we show up, this is serious.
That's when I looked at that roster and there was some fear and trepidation there.
That we lined up to play the one team that was the biggest and greatest.
Probably the greatest lacrosse team ever put together.
Against 20 no-names.
The way they looked, they had t-shirts on basically, and the teams like Mount Washington and Green Turtle came out dressed to the nines.
We were a laughing stock.
Who is this team? Who are they? What are they? Why are they here?
Oh my gosh, we are gonna get killed by the Green Turtle. We're gonna get annihilated.
We're so out of our league. This is crazy.
But because the Turtle was there, a lot of people came out to see him. At the end of the game, we'll ask ourselves one question. Did we play as hard as we could with the gifts that God's given us? That's the question.
After the first 50 seconds, it went up 2-0.
Then it was 5-0.
This is gonna be so ugly.
But FCA just kind of inched back and inched back. At halftime, Frank tells me to take a picture of the scoreboard because at halftime it was 5-5.
It was tied score.
Game goes into overtime. Tucker had just graduated high school, but here he is covering the greatest player of all time, Gary Gates. But Gary has the ball, he's up front, going to the goal, but the next thing you know is you see Gary Gates' stick, helicopter check, and the ball went on the ground, and the first overtime ended with no one scoring.
Double overtime! David Kelly fed him the ball backside, bam! Scored the goal. Crazy! The miracle on the mountains. And we realize that you're a good God. You want to do something through this ragtag team.
And we just praised the Lord and just thanked him. We did it quietly, we weren't trying to be rude, but we just praised and thanked God for his goodness, his grace, his mercy. And I remember all of us, the third that were committed in their faith, the third on the fence, the third that were there just to play lacrosse, we're all giving praise to God.
When I heard that FCA had upset the Green Turtle, I was skeptical. I thought they were playing a joke on me.
FCA winning that game was an amazing thing, and people thought, well, it was just maybe a fluke until the next game.
Won the game and kneeled in the middle of the field, gave God glory.
Enormous crowds came out just to watch FCA.
The next day we had to turn around, and now we're in the semifinal game.
They heard that we were actually having Bible study. They hired a pastor to fly in and do a chapel and a prayer with them before the game.
The newspapers, they're writing about God. That's pretty cool.
Came out here, Bill, with a little different kind of purpose than a lot of teams out here. We came in here to represent Fellowship of Christian Athletes and that national organization.
I think that team showed that the strength of relationships off the field carries on to the field.
That they would invite me to play with them and love me for where I was.
The Fellowship of Christian Athletes had to beat some pretty good teams to get here, including the #1 seeded Green Turtle team, the defending champions.
Well, they did, and they beat Colorado, which was a favorite to make it to the finals as well, in the semifinals in a close game.
We beat Team Colorado in the semis. Now we're going to play Mount Washington in the championship.
And getting all set to start action, Mount Washington will be in blue. The Fellowship of Christian Athletes, white tops, red shorts.
FCA gave us all we could handle for the first 20 or so minutes of the game.
Next thing you know, it's like 8-1 them, and we're like, oh no, this is not going well. Timeout. With about a few minutes to go in the fourth quarter, we make a run. 4, 5.
What the heck was that?
6.
Down, and here's the big face-off. Frank Kelly gets it, putting pressure again on the defense. And here comes Kabovic.
7. Few minutes left, and we had all the mo. You could feel it. It's going to happen.
Time's wearing out. I'll hold it, and that'll be it. 10-7. The Mount Washington winners. But that wasn't the total story. The biggest story maybe was the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. The fact that they got to this final. They surprised everybody to get this far. And the goals for this team are goals that make you believe in the value systems of this country again.
Maybe it wasn't about getting a championship, but instead about producing champions.
That team impacted not just FCA, but impacted lacrosse.
The people that have been saved because of that team.
I can remember saying to myself, they have something that I want, that I don't have.
That game was a springboard in the beginning for FCA to evolve to what it has become today.
The proudest moments of my life being on my knees there praying with my sons.
It launched something far bigger and far greater than we could have ever imagined.
Nobody knew about them. They didn't walk in with this big impressive entourage. They didn't have all the biggest names, but they played one of the greatest games.